topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Hello, everyone. It's Arthi with Light Up Your Life, and it is Friday. And I am so humbled, as always, to be with you all today. And for those of you who will be watching the recording, today I don't want to take up too much time today because I am incredibly humbled with the presence of someone who speaks volumes for themselves with the way that they lead their life, the way that they have pursued education through research and through really revolutionizing the way that we can really look at nutritional studies. Dr. Colin Campbell is on our show today, and he is someone that I actually have been following for a few years now when I was journeying through my mom's cancer support and looking at different ways of addressing cancer, which Dr. Colin is so passionate about in terms of research, is the link between nutrition and cancer, which he does a lot of work with, as we will be talking about in the China study, which is one of the most comprehensive studies that was ever conducted. And there is a book called the China study. And then the follow-up with The Whole, which is another book that he has written, has also taken a deep dive at nutritional studies. Another book that came out in December of 2020 is The Future of Nutrition, where he's really examining in all of these contexts, how can we present? How can he help to present the real truth about how we can have health in our hands by looking at nutrition? Dr. Campbell has a comprehensive, awesome biography of his life in terms of the work he has done in revolutionary measures. He has over 60 years of experience. He has grown up on a dairy farm where he had a lot of a familiar background with how it is to encompass the agricultural community and how agriculture works. He also had decided to pursue pre-veterinary studies and then pushed into nutritional studies and was actually asked to be part of a program that allowed him to do lots of research and then conduct research, and did much of his work at Cornell University, which he currently is a professor in the nutritional studies program. As well, he is the founder of Nutritional Studies, which encourage you all to look at because it has wonderful resources, and we'll be talking about that in general. And Dr. Campbell always gives humbleness to his family for providing such support in his lifetime, his wife, Karen, and his children, who have all become passionate about plant-based, whole food lifestyle, and his grandchildren. I am incredibly honored to have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Campbell, as his time is so precious, as he has many speaking engagements around the United States and internationally. And even during this pandemic, he has been so busy doing a lot of online exhibitions and expos. Without further ado, I present us with Dr. Campbell today.
Thank you so much, Artie. Really appreciate being on your show. It's a delight.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell, I have to start by saying how I asked you to come on because Dr. Campbell, you're one of my LinkedIn contacts, and I wished you a happy birthday. And I asked if you would come on my show.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here. Dr. Campbell, I want to start by asking you. I always am fascinated by, and you give a lot of contribution to your family for a lot of for where you are and how you believe in nutrition. Can you just share with us how it was in the family of origin that you grew up in, and being on a dairy farm, and just that experience in itself, and how it's led you to really take this passion in nutrition throughout your lifetime?
Well, thank you. Yes, I was raised on a dairy farm, actually milking cows, and doing all the farm work, as did my father before me and my grandfather and so forth. So we came from a farm family of many generations. And so my dad, who was an immigrant, only had a couple of years of formal education, and he was anxious for me to get an education that he didn't have. So I actually, during my 5 years of junior and senior high school, I drove a car of just over 100 miles a day to go to school, to a public school that didn't cost my father too much money. Didn't cost him any money, actually. And so eventually I went away to school, ended up at Cornell University, all that sort of thing, and doing my graduate work. And at that time, my graduate thesis, of all things, was on the idea that we should promote the consumption of more protein. And that meant more protein from animal-based foods, of all things. I believed in that. I mean, everybody did. And that was the basis, in fact, for dairy farming, if you will, to a great extent. And so that's what I did. And I taught that in the beginning, and it was all about protein. And then my first academic position at Virginia Tech University, I was in charge of or coordinating, I should say, a program in the Philippines for the State Department feeding malnourished children. And malnourished children in poor countries was thought to be due to, in those days, a lack of protein consumption. So just fit right in with my background, make sure these kids got enough protein, etc. But I saw something that was troubling. The few families who had children who consumed the most protein were the ones most likely to get liver cancer, of all things. And so that presented a problem, and it was hard to believe. And so I came back and got the funding from NIH that lasted then for that project for the next 27 years. And it allowed me to do a lot of experimental research with my graduate students and other people, colleagues, and so forth. And we published all of that. And I found that, sure enough, the protein from cow's milk, of all things, increases the experimental cancer. Wow, this is crazy. But it took a while to really work on that. But I tell that story because I came from a background not believing what I came to believe. I had to work hard to make sure that the work we were doing was good, that was defensible. That for publication purposes, I had to get feedback from peers and so forth. All of that gave me an opportunity to really go deep into the question concerning not only protein, but diet as a whole in the formation of disease. In my family, obviously my father was a farmer and all that. I was eating meat, milk, and eggs like everybody else. And so my wife, in fact, she was too when we got married, and we've been married almost now for 59 years. But in any case, we have 5 children and 11 grandchildren. She's been instrumental, I should tell you, in what we do, because yes, I get the data. We started getting the data in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and so forth. And I saw this story that I just told. Protein from animals is not what we thought it was. It just isn't. It increases, it's associated with increase in cancer, increase in heart disease, increase in this and that, and a few other things. And so I had to probe that question very carefully, because in the system in which I'm a part, they were opposed. They were opposed, strongly opposed. So I had to, like a minnow swimming up Niagara Falls. It was kind of difficult at times, but at the same time, it was educational, because I could see where the pressures came from that resisted this information. And the information I'm talking about, of course, is a diet where we consume plants, number one. And number two, we try to make sure that these are the whole plants. We don't take the nutrients out of plants and put them in pills. That doesn't really work that well. That's not the way to go. We have to eat the food as nature presents it to us. And when you start examining that in detail, in the inside of cells and inside the body, and you see this remarkable integration of all kinds of reactions, one with another, which I called holism, with the W
Yes.
instead of the. In any case, when you start all of a sudden come to realize that's the way life is, it gives a very different impression of what food and health is all about. So a long-winded answer to your question, but basically that's what it is. So now I'm just trying to elaborate on the details of that story.
Yes, it's a remarkable story, Dr. Campbell. One of the things that I see you saying and hearing is the fact that you have had to, and there is still very much of a continued push because everyone thinks you need a magnification of protein. And for you to discuss and describe that the amount of animal protein and the harm that it can do to our bodies, I think we're finally, I don't know if you feel like we're finally in 2021 realizing, just with all of the research you've conducted and the field of studies and nutrition studies, do you think we're finally making some headway in this area?
Small amounts of headway. Certainly the book, the China study that I published with my youngest son, who now is a physician carrying on the research.
I have to hold it up for a second. Yes, I have.
That's it. Yeah. That is done far beyond what I thought would do, and well over 3 million copies, and there's about 50 foreign languages. That's 50 foreign languages that are translated into. So it's become an international sort of book in a sense. So in that sense, yes, a lot of people are talking about this. They're using the word plant-based, which is a term that I devised myself. I didn't want to get into the vegetarian vegan thing at that time. So it was a plant-based concept based on science. So in that sense, yeah. But on the other hand, I have to say, there's a vast amount of work yet to be done. The public tend not to know this remarkable effect of food and nutrition. And being able not only to prevent serious diseases like heart disease and cancer and so forth, but also to actually be able to, with many of those people, actually treat them with this, switch their diet, and then watch things change in a matter of days. I think that phenomenon is just really excites me. We have a lot to do, and unfortunately, the national policy that's now being promoted and has been promoted for a long time is not consistent with this message. And I spent about 20 years of really active years involved in national policy development in Washington and in expert panels and giving testimony before congressional committees and all that sort of thing. I know what happens, so to speak, behind the curtain. And that what happens there is greatly influenced by the corporate sector. We need business. We need corporations. I'm a free market guy. I want to make that clear. But on the other hand, at the same time, we also need to pay attention to what we're really doing to ourselves. And so that's still a task in front of us. How do you inform the public? What it comes down to.
So, Dr. Campbell, obviously conversations like today and the work that you do, and the title of our segment is called Health in Our Hands, because truly the end of the day, we all make decisions. Like, even with the amount of studies you did, I also in my former life ate eggs, meat, all of it growing up. And then I also made the conscientious choice of becoming vegetarian. And then when I watched your documentary, Forks Over Knives, and I saw the impact of the dairy industry, is when then I made a decision for myself to become vegan. But what I'm trying to say to you is, I guess my question is, where did your journey unfold, even though you were doing research? When did you make that personal click that you wanted to you just decided, because agriculturally you grew up eating this stuff. So how did you make your personal switch?
Well, I started doing the research, as I indicated before, during the 1960s, with that observation that Philippines for the children. But then I got to formal research in the laboratory, it was well funded, a lot of students and that sort of thing, during the 1970s. And during the 1970s, I was asking myself, is it really true that animal protein increases cancer in the laboratory? That was the question. And does plant-based protein do the same thing? The answer is no, by the way. But that research was unfolding during the 1970s, and it was actually in the late 1970s when my work was getting some attention, quite a bit of attention, and I was on a National Academy of Science panel on diet, nutrition, cancer. So I suddenly was thrust into the national spotlight to some extent. I was a representative of Congress and for the biomedical research community and that sort of thing. And so I started speaking out about some of these things and discovering where the sore points were. But in any case, late 1970s, early 1980s, my wife was watching very closely. She starts changing our diet. Okay. She was magnanimous in what she was doing. She was making sure that we were using the kind of food that my research was showing to us and raising children and creating the food that was tasty. And we started changing during the early 1980s. And it was not until about late 1980s that we finally made the total switch. And that's when, particularly at one point in time, when she was diagnosed with, of all things, a pretty serious cancer, melanoma. And she got that, and that was a bit of a surprise. It turned out the evidence for that, it was there. That's true enough. It was advanced cancer, they called it, stage 3 melanoma. But when I looked at that under the microscope, with a pathologist and saw some other things, she made the decision not to take the chemotherapy, not to do the surgery to remove it from her lymph glands. She didn't do any of that. She went whole 100% this way. And that was a big event, because then there was no fooling around about it. From about 1990, we were 100% there. And now here it is, 20 some, well, no, I'm sorry, she got the cancer in the early 2000s when I wrote the book. Yeah, so now here it is, almost 20 years later. She didn't do the chemotherapy. She didn't do any of that. But she's been very healthy. She's now 80, I'm 87. And so I think we've benefited from those changes. And that's just a case of one, but I don't make my case on the basis of what we ourselves found, but it's based on the science itself.
Of course, yes. And the science speaks for itself, but I always, I always think about what does it mean when you lead this type of lifestyle? And so, I think some people are afraid that what does it mean to be plant-based? What does it mean to eat what does it mean to have this lifestyle? So I guess, Dr. Campbell, can you talk about the experience of having a plant-based lifestyle from your eyes and your lens? What does that mean for someone who may not necessarily know what it means, because it's out on the market and we hear it, but some people are afraid of really understanding what it means?
Well, first off, I emphasize the wholeness of foods, all the foods. We can chop it up and do all those kinds of things. We can cook it too. That's not such, so it's just eating plants and trying to eat all the parts of the plants mixed and matched and so forth at the same time. That's the basic biochemistry supporting that argument. On a practical level, though, when people start this and they think it's kind of strange, when they first eat vegetables and fruits and all that kind of thing, most people eat some of that anyhow. But when they go the whole way, it's a little bit difficult for folks, for a lot of people. I understand why, because they're used to doing the other kind of thing. What I can say now, I think with some considerable confidence, based on some other studies too, is that when people start it, we see changes in a matter of 1 to 2 days. Serum cholesterol drops like a bomb if you do the lab test before and after kind of thing. blood sugar for the diabetics, that drops very dramatically. And so these kind of changes occur very quickly. And they might stay with it for 10 days, strictly doing it because of motivation. But they don't oftentimes stay with it after that because they're pulled back to the old diets. So therefore, the question is, how can you keep people at that level doing the same thing? Well, first off, they have to believe it. Secondly, they have to actually experience it, I think. They see the results. But the third thing, they have to remember, this may take a little while for their taste preferences to change. And that time, more or less, is about a month, maybe 2, or possibly even 3. When people go there and stay this way and eat this way, suddenly you crave a salad. And you look back and you say, how could I have ever eaten that other food, that I always loved so much? And so you do get into this. Your body is speaking back to, I think the body's speaking back to us, saying, hey, I like this, I feel good. This is, keep at it. And so suddenly, your brain sort of says, okay, I get it. I'm going to stay with this. And the more you stay with it, the more entrenched you become in a new lifestyle. And then you don't want to eat the other food. And that means not dumping a lot of added oil either, or a lot of refined carbohydrates, that sort of thing. So trying to eat the whole food, and we can make it tasty, obviously. The really attractive idea that I find intriguing about this is that all the ethnic cuisines in the world, we have lots of different ethnic cuisines. We well know that, and of course we can taste them, sample them in various and sundry restaurants. We can maintain the same ethnic cuisine idea. So when people, the only difference between ethnic cuisines for the most part is flavors and herbs and spices. We can still use and keep that flavor. And of course, some of the ethnic cuisines have maybe special foods, if you will. That's okay too. So I'm not talking about all of a sudden saying, okay, here's a new idea. I'm not going to eat Chinese food anymore, or I'm not going to eat Indian food or African, whatever. That's not what I'm saying. We can maintain all those ethnic cuisines. And we can do it by just, using the ethnic herbs and spices and flavors and whatever else comes along with that idea. Quite nice.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that you just said that spoke. When you said craving a salad, it brought up just there are days, like if I haven't had a salad in 36 hours, I'm literally craving it. And you're right, your body, and you use your brain, you literally start to develop the palate to eat this way. And it is a marathon, like you described, Dr. Campbell. We all have slip-ups when we are changing, and this is not a diet. You always talk about this is not a diet, this is a lifestyle. So what I'm talking about, when you say slip-ups, I think you even mentioned one of your children. I forgot what book it was, but even one of your children, I believe, or grandchildren that sometimes has slip-ups or whatever they're called. They still, as a whole, eat this way. And that's what I think you remind us.
Yeah, somehow that I'd say I give a lot of credit to my wife on that because, the food tastes good. And then our daughter, she came out with a cookbook, China Study Cookbook, and our daughter-in-law has really quite a lot of success with the Plant Pure Cookbook. And she actually has a program she's had on cooking, which is very good. It's quite successful. And they're into it. My youngest son, who wrote the book with me, he was at the time and had graduated in the theater from Cornell. He was an aspiring actor, and but he was a good writer too. And so he came back to work with me in writing the China Study. Well, now he decided to switch to go to medical school. He did that. He got his medical degree. Now he's on the faculty at the School of Medicine at the University of Rochester, and he's carrying on some of his research now. In fact, he's got a study ongoing right now on stage 4 breast cancer in women. And this has never been done quite this way before. Actually, having them use this kind of diet and then see what happens. It's a very exciting opportunity. It's a
Yes.
first step. It got suspended during the last year because of the pandemic to some extent.
Still working.
It's coming back. And so,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So then my oldest son, he's more trained in business and economy, politics and economics. And he organized this concept called the Plant Pure Communities, the nonprofit. That's made up of now, I don't know what the number is, something like 200 to 300 of these wellness groups. He calls them pods here and abroad. And these are local community groups who are choosing to go on to this journey in a sense in various ways and working in their communities to do various and sundry things. And now he's got a program, telemedicine in a sense, doing this kind of thing, and with physicians. So he's very, very busy doing that. As I say, my youngest son is a physician. My daughter is now the president. She went on and got her doctorate in education. She's the president of our online course on nutritionstudies.org with Cornell University. She was in the Peace Corps and she sort of got introduced to that country and was very much involved with them. She has still a place there, so we're involved in that. I'm sorry, you're. I'm not sure I'm on the camera. I'm on the camera, but I don't know about the. You went off sound. I don't see what the problem is here. Gosh, this is not good.